Okay. Well, you probably don't know, but I do a little bit of motocross, and I do a little bit of trail riding with my husband, and I love this sport. And I thought I'd just tell you about an event that I went to 2 months ago, and it was a females champagne motocross weekend. So we just drank the champagne on the Friday night, and they said to us, "Can you please bring your bikes in to have them looked over?" And I thought, okay, fair enough, I suppose. Us women aren't the best at maintenance for our bikes, but, you know, my bike's only 1 year old, and, you know, it works really well, and I love, like, riding it, and being on my motorbike is just fantastic, and I think it works perfectly. But, you know, I'm a good girl, and I do obey the rules, so the advert said it's best to test. So I thought, I'll take my bike in. And so there's about 23 of us women, actually half of us over the age of 30 and half under the age of 30, so it was a really interesting night. And eventually it came to my turn to have my bike looked over. And the expert said to me, "Okay, can you please try the brake?" So this is where the brake is, on the right-hand side, and I tried it, and the angle was right and the tension was right, and he said, "Good job." I thought, cool, my bike's in good order. And he said, "Check the clutch," which is on the other handlebar, and that was good too. And he said, "Now check the back brake." So there's I checking the back brake, and he didn't look very happy. And he said to me, "How long has this been like this?" And I went, "I don't know, you know, how should I know? I think it works perfectly." And he said to me, "Try it again." So I tried it again, and he wasn't very happy. And neither was my friend. My friend had been on this low-carb diet for 2 months now, and she hadn't lost any weight whatsoever. And you can imagine that she was really frustrated, eh? You know, there was 2 other people in our same office, and they had been on this low-carb diet. They had followed the protocol, and they had lost heaps of weight. You know, every week they were losing it. But my friend Sarah, she was one of those people that, you know, the standard protocol doesn't fit, you know, and she said to me, "Janelle, is there anything that I can do to, you know, extra beyond the standard protocol to get the results that I want?" And I said, "Yeah, because we are all individuals, aren't we? We are all individuals, and some of us just don't just react in the same way to the standard protocol." And it just wasn't working for her. And neither was I. I wasn't working at all. I was on holiday in Marrakesh, in Morocco. And I was standing there in the square. Have you been to Marrakesh? And it was about 8 o'clock at night, and the lights were shining, and there were people there with their pet monkeys, and there was these jugglers, and I was just so overwhelmed with all the options and all the influences that I had on me. Over here I had the people with all their tagines and all the food, and the aroma was, it smelled beautiful. And they kept beckoning to me, come, have a try of our tagine. Oh, but over here I saw some shoes, and so I saw some material. And, you know, they have all these corridors, and there's just shops everywhere, and there's just all these options that you can go down. And then Russell, he just wanted to go home because we'd been out all day, and he wanted to go back to our beautiful Medina and relax. And I just felt, you know, overwhelmed because I had all these options, and there's all these influences on me. Just like estrogen has in your body. Estrogen can go down the good, the bad, or the ugly pathway. It has options depending on the influences that we place on that estrogen. So that's what I'm here to talk about to you today, is estrogen metabolism. Okay, and we might just go, well, why should we be interested in estrogen metabolism? Well, I'm sure that you're very familiar with the Australian cancer statistics. I don't really need to tell you that 1 in 4 women get cancer, right? and 1 in 3 men get cancer. But what about if I was to tell you that you could monitor your cancer risk? How about that? Would you be interested? I'm sure your patients would be interested too, to be able to monitor their cancer risk. And guess what else? We don't just have to monitor that risk, we can change the risk. And so we have the estrogen metabolism test. It's a urine test available through PathLab. And what it does do is actually measure the estrogen metabolites, because some estrogens are good and some estrogens are not so good. Because they're not in, we all know that estrogen has some good functions and some bad functions, right? It's not all the same. So there's some supplements and some lifestyle choices that we can make that are going to change how our estrogen is metabolized in the body. Which pathway the estrogen chooses to go down, depending on how we influence it. So today I'm just going to start with a little overview of estrogen metabolism. It is a quick talk, so it is pretty brief, but it'll give you the basics. And then we'll go on to just looking at a few of the studies and then how we can change and modify our estrogen in the body. So what I want you to take away today is that some estrogen metabolites are good and some of them are bad. And I call them the good, the bad and the ugly. The 2-hydroxy is the good, the 16-alpha hydroxy is the bad, and then we've got the 4-hydroxy, which is the ugly. A lot of people get quite overwhelmed by biochemical pathways, really, where you can't remember them. And what I want to know is that when there's too much of the bad estrogen, we get cancer. And when there's too much of the weak estrogen around and not enough of the so-called bad, we get osteoporosis. So it's really a balance. So this is the estrogen metabolism pathway. Firstly, we'll just go through it step by step. We have estrone, EST1, E1, and estradiol, E2, and they can interconvert. Okay? Then we have the hydroxylation step in the pathway. So the hydroxyl group will be added to either the estradiol or the estrone. In some places I've actually just put an E, because that's actually for estradiol or estrone, because they do interconvert. So you can get the 4-hydroxy estradiol or estrone in the body. Okay, and this is it pictorially. So hydroxylation can occur on the different carbon atoms of the estrogen molecules. And this is estradiol, obviously. So there's the 2 carbon, so you get 2-hydroxy estradiol, 4 and 16, just so you know what it's actually referring to when you're going 2, 4 and 16. So thirdly, there's a methylation step, and we hear a lot about methylation, and you're probably very familiar with COMT, and it's needing the cofactor SAMe to do that job. Okay, so it's the 2-hydroxy and the 4-hydroxy that get methylated, and they become 2-methoxy and 4-methoxy estrogens. I've colour-coded this for you to see which are the good and which are the bad estrogens here as well. Or you can think about them as the stimulating estrogens. So in red is the stimulating and blue is sort of more protective. So the methyl methoxy estrogens are protective. And then we can't forget that the estrogens actually get conjugated before they leave the body. Okay? So before they get excreted. So let's just go over a few of the brief studies on, briefly go over the studies on estrogen metabolites. So we have the good estrogen, 2-hydroxy and 2-methoxy estrogen. And it's shown that it actually is quite a weak, I'll call it a weak estrogen, because it doesn't bind the estrogen receptor very well, but it actually binds sex hormone binding globulin, SHBG. So it's very bound up, so it's not free, that it can actually have its effect at the receptor site.